Log.
Daycares with no kids, healthcare with no clients, Somalis threatening to kill you if you ask any questions about those things. Well, that's not actually happening. You see, that's just white supremacy, apparently. Now, of course, if you have a set of eyes, ears, and a working brain, you know that counter argument is preposterous, yet that's what the leftist media wants you to believe. As the Somali invasion intensifies, we're supposed to turn the other way and let it happen, lest we all get labeled a racist. In reality, wanting to send the Somalis back has absolutely nothing to do with their race. They could be white, for all I care. They could be brown. They could be purple. They could be green. It doesn't matter. It has everything to do with their false religion, which makes it impossible for them to properly assimilate. It's called Islam. We don't want that here. We want the Baptist bias.
Thanks for joining us on the Baptist Bias. I'm your host, Pastor Shelley. Got my trusty new IFB mug this evening. And of course, we don't like Islam over here. We got the Baptist Bias, of course. And I'm joined here with my co-host, Ben Shapiro. How's it going?
Doing good. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm very excited about the show tonight. We've got Chase Geiser. We've got a lot of great topics that we're going to be talking about. Throwing it back over to you.
Sorry about that. Ben Shalom, is that?
Whatever you
it's
want.
Ben the Baptist. That's who it is. Yeah, of course, we have a special guest this evening from Infowars. Chase Geiser is joining us. How's it going, Chase?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on your show. Rob Agueros over at Infowars is always wearing the Baptist Bias t-shirt. And I was pleased to find out what the hell it was. You guys are awesome. I was checking out your content before I hopped on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We like to share the wealth, the Baptist wealth. Of course, a lot of people hide who they really are and who they're being supported by. They get $7,000 per post. We just bring the Baptist bias with us. And so we're excited to have you on the show and to talk about this Muslim invasion that seems to be catching a lot of attention, at least on X. I don't know if the mainstream media cares as much, but it seems like on X, there's videos everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And frankly, it doesn't even matter what the mainstream media says anymore because nobody watches it. I mean, I had the privilege of working for Alex Jones for several years and seeing the numbers of the impressions on his X analytics. And I can tell you for a fact that the Alex Joneses, the Candace Owens, the Nick Fuentes, and literally at this point, thousands of others of people have 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 10 times the audience that Fox News has, even compared to the numbers that they had when they had Tucker Carlson on the network. And so I'm very pleased to see that it doesn't matter whether or not the mainstream media is covering anything anymore because nobody's watching. It was always such a pain in the ass 10 years ago when the mainstream media would ignore something or inaccurately cover something like weapons of mass destruction or something of that nature because everybody was watching it. But now finally they're dead. They're just in denial. Basically, Mark Levin's show, in my opinion, is him with an audience of one. It's him talking to Donald Trump. Donald's the only one watching. So that's the only thing about it. But yeah, look, they're always going to be ignoring the Muslim invasion in the mainstream media and the official narrative.
Yeah, Ben, is anybody unironically watching the mainstream media anymore?
Probably boomers, I guess, on both sides of the political spectrum. But Alex is rightfully...
Let's see what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Alex has rightfully labeled it the dinosaur media, the dying media, the horror media over the years, and of course he's totally right about all of those designations. But at the end of the day, it's decaying. It is so like old news at this point for people to be going to cable television, MSNBC and Fox News even, and some of these other outlets to figure out what's going on when you could log on to X and you get everything you need right there. Obviously, there's alternative media like Infowars available as well, but you're right in the sense that what they're saying, I think, has never been more irrelevant than today in 2025.
Well, I want to watch a clip here that I saw on X. Honestly, I'll just be honest, it pissed me off. I don't really even like going to the mall. But I saw this clip of Mall of America. I think it's clip F that we have, and it shows just kind of chaos. It also just irks me that in the background they have Shake Shack, and I love Shake Shack, and I don't want any negative things to happen to Shake Shack. And so, but I mean, I saw this clip, and I already don't want to go to the mall. But if I was walking in, I would walk out right away. I mean, how would you, if you're taking your family to the mall, Ben, you're going to just want to be around this?
Oh, no, that looks like a wonderful environment for the kids. You know what I mean? Just kind of sit back. No, of course not. That looks horrible. I would immediately sprint out. I don't know what the hell is going on here. It looks like some kind of brawl. There's definitely civil unrest here. And this is the cultural clash that somebody like a Tim Waltz, and I'm mispronouncing that on purpose, wants.
Isn't he a retard?
No, that's his son.
That's his son.
I thought people were driving by Tim Waltz house calling him a retard.
But this clash of civilizations here, this is the exact result that the ruling class elites would like to happen. And we're seeing it transpire right there.
I would assume someone like you guys, kind of be in the tip of the spear of the news cycle of seeing clips like this already. But I want to get your thoughts. What's going on over here in Minnesota? Is it really this bad? Is this just bombastic news coverage, or what's going on in Minnesota?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, the video says it all. Does that mean that every single place that you go in Minnesota is like that? No, probably not. But look, what's happening in the United States of America, I like to liken to the Lord of the Rings series. Maybe it's too nerdy for me to do that. Maybe it's not as, commercially accessible as it was 30 years ago. It seems like everybody in 2002 knew what the Lord of the Rings was. But you've got this Shire, and there's all these innocent, good people, and the entirety of Middle Earth is collapsing around them, and they have no idea because they're completely isolated from it. But unless something is done, there is going to be no Shire, right? That's the whole kind of theme of the series, that it's the little people that get involved that save the entire world from total collapse and total evil. And so I think that, in the United States of America, we have these pockets, these small towns in Arkansas, small towns in Illinois, even Tennessee, whatever, where it feels like none of this is happening. We just see it through a clip like that. But that is the spread of the Uruk-hai, man. Those are the orcs, the mindless orcs that have been literally inbred because they have a cousin marriage rate of 40% in most Muslim-run countries. Literally first or second cousins, 40% of their marriages for the course of the last, 1,500 years or 1,200 years, however many hundreds of years it's been. I mean, they haven't invented anything in that area since chess and algebra. That's how bad the inbreeding has been. It's like Muhammad came and chess was the last thing that they ever invented. Nothing incredible. And so I think that if we don't stop it, if we don't seriously adopt an America First mentality and eradicate these people from our civilization, and I don't mean eradicate in the Hitlerian sense. I don't mean executing them or anything like that, but just, simple laws like, hey, if you want to immigrate or come into the United States, we're going to do a DNA test to determine if your parents were cousins. Or we're going to do a DNA test to determine if you and your spouse are cousins. And if you're cousins, you can't come here. It has nothing to do with your religion, but wouldn't that weed out a lot of the problem?
Well, I looked it up. Google is telling me that the average IQ of citizens of Somalia is 68.
They're dumber than Forrest Gump.
That's incredibly low. And, at the end of the day, you can't just fast forward. Even if you said it's an education problem, you still can't fast forward 12, 15 years of education in 5 minutes anyways. So, you let loose a bunch of uneducated, uncivilized individuals into a actual very civilized society, high trust society. I mean, individuals that are 16 are able to drive vehicles, motor vehicles. It's very dangerous. Obviously, we have access to firearms that are extremely dangerous as well. People are pretty much just walking around unarmed, believing that they're going to be safe. But you bring in a bunch of barbarous, uncivilized people that have very low education, low IQs. I mean, this is just a disaster waiting to happen. And to me, again, there's a lot of motives here for this occurring. But it seems like, just from a 1,000-foot view or a 10,000-foot view, when I'm looking at the situation, it seems like leftists and Democrats have just become so agnostic to any truth that they essentially just elect morons, literal retards, to come into office. They're extremely corrupt, and through their corrupt means, they just want money or votes or whatever, and they'll bring anyone in. I don't think that Tim Walz cares about Somalia. I don't think he cares about Muslims or Islam. I don't think that a lot of people in Minnesota care at all about this. It's just simply just a product of being, rejecting truth, hating things of God, and as a result, you just denigrate yourself so far through this corruption. And it seems like a vicious cycle, because you bring these people in, then you create more voting scams, more of a populace that can keep voting in the corruption. And I kind of wonder, how do you even break this vicious cycle of corrupt politicians bringing in mass migrants, them constantly voting them, and having this corrupt election cycle? I mean, it kind of seems like a self-fulfilling prophecy that I don't know how do you intervene in this particular cycle?
Well, look, I'll say it. I don't want to get you in trouble. The only way that you solve the level of corruption that we have in the United States now, in my opinion, is you have to put the evil politicians up against the wall, and you have to execute them. Honestly,
I mean, I can't disagree with that. My question is who? Obviously, do we need the federal government?
Now you're trying to get Chase. Now you're trying to get Chase in trouble.
No,
Pastor.
I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble.
Let's not get the guest in trouble here.
All right.
No, but look, and I'm not excited about it. I'm not lusting for it, or like a vampire just foaming at the mouth at the idea of blood here. I supported and voted for Donald Trump for the purpose of, as a Hail Mary, if anybody can do it, it's him. He gets into office. We've got the House and the Senate and the executive, and we're not seeing these. I mean, we're seeing good things, much better than what we would have seen from Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, certainly, but we're not seeing the fundamental corruption in our civilization being corrected hardly at all. And I'm not even blaming Trump. I just think that it's been proven in the last 12 months that no matter how good the leader is at the top of this system that is the United States of America, it's so corrupt that you can't fix it from the top. So what that means is you got to either let it collapse and then rebuild something new. You got to make it collapse and build something new. But there's not going to be voting our way out of this. This is just going to get worse until people get violent. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I think that to some degree, violence is an inevitable reality, right? In the sense that either A, you execute criminals, or you allow criminals to execute innocent victims. You're not going to have a society with zero violence. We've never seen a country with zero violence. The dissidents are going to be executed, whoever they are, whomever the government deems a dissident. In a godly society, it's evil that's the dissidents, and they're executed. In a communist society, the truth tellers are the dissidents, and they're executed. In our current society, it seems like just innocent young white women on the subway are executed. We see individuals just walking down the street on the subway, minding their own business, just executed,
or Charlie
killed.
Kirk, or Donald Trump, or Alex Jones. I mean, they're executing all sorts of people, not just random people.
Yeah, obviously specific people. I'm just saying beyond obvious high value targets, we just see a lot of just innocent people. Young women walking down the street by themselves, individuals wearing a MAGA hat. I mean, we see a lot of just violence towards innocent individuals. And, it kind of seems like it's inevitable. I mean, you have to have punishment of evildoers. That's the whole point of government in the first place. I would like to see what you said. We have a lot of Republicans in office in theory, on paper, and we have supposedly our president saying he wants to deport people. We've seen all this corruption coming out about Minnesota, fraud from a daycare perspective, from an election perspective. Why can't the feds actually do something good for once and come in and say, hey, there's a lot of issues here. We're putting everyone in jail that had anything to do with the Somali stuff, and we're deporting anybody that came in through this fraudulent scheme. I mean, that would fix the problem in theory. I just don't know that we have the people incentivized to execute this kind of a plan.
Well, I don't think there's any incentive for any of the entities that exist, the actual institutions that exist in our government, to solve any of these problems in a real or meaningful way. There's incentive for the politicians to kind of attempt to, or to at least say that they're going to attempt to. But if you look at the institutions like Department of Defense, Department of Justice, FBI, CIA, they look at things from a utilitarian Machiavellian perspective. They believe that the end justifies the means, and anything is justified to the extent or in proportion or relation to whether or not it's in the best interests of national security as they define it, right? And so we have a situation in the United States where, because of inflation since the 70s, we have a massive depopulation crisis. And the incentive, or the intention rather, of all of this illegal migration, initially at least, although I think it's been manipulated and abused by the political parties, both of them, especially the Democrats, of course, for reasons that are very obvious that have been discussed a million times. But the incentive is, all right, if we have a sinking population due to inflation, and we can't solve the inflation problem because of the nature of our currency and our fractional reserve banking system, then what we have to do is replace the people that aren't being born here. And so that's replacement migration. So we'll bring all these people in of low IQ from South America, Central America, all over the world. They'll be good enough through our institutions and our public schools to do the jobs that Americans won't do, like landscaping, contract work, janitorial work, just like the grunt work. And that'll be how we have this labor force that continues to prop up the tax base for the government into the future. And then we can create this division, and through this division, conglomerate political power and control the population long term. That's what I believe that they're trying to do. But if you look at, for example, the Department of Defense, from a national security standpoint, they're thinking, hey, if we don't replace the people that aren't being born here, we're not going to have a tax base. That's going to be incredibly detrimental to the U.S. economy. Or if you think of all the wars that we've been in the Middle East, regardless of what your perspective on Israel is, we have to have oil traded in dollar denominations in order to create an artificial demand for our currency to ensure that our currency remains the global reserve currency, because if that goes away, then our economy collapses. That's seen as a national security threat. So they're thinking it's okay for, innocent people to die because we're bringing in these violent criminals if it means that in the long term, we're replacing a labor force that we are dependent on in order to maintain our superpower status. Like, this is the utilitarian Machiavellian thinking of our institutions. And so that's why you never see any change.
I think a lot of what you're saying I agree with. I guess I also think that there's some other layers there. And in my mind, if you get rid of no-fault divorce, you incentivize families to actually have children, you quit hating on white people, we have enough people to just continue population cycles. But at the end of the day, they don't want to keep populating more Christians because they're not easily ruled over. Christians are people that think hard, work hard, actually create wealth. And, people that are in middle class are much more difficult to take over, rule over when they own their own houses, their own land, their own businesses. They actually are able to influence the marketplace. Whereas if you bring in a slave class that has a stupid religion like Islam, where people are just easily manipulated and taken advantage of, then that to me is like a spiritual layer to what you're saying. Because I'm not saying that anything that you brought up is not part of the plan. I think that there's also another spiritual layer here, though, where they don't want a Christian populace being born because they are going to resist a lot of what a lot of just evil, corruption. They want to have an influence. A lot of these other migrants that come in, while they vote, they're not voting. So we all know they don't care about politics. They're usually in a country that's so corrupt that they're just forced to vote for the one candidate or forced to just, cast a ballot. They have no real idea about, voting or, having a say in politics or running for office. They don't care about that. They're not even interested in those kind of things. So as a result, they're just pretty much non-resistant, I believe, in the political sphere. When it comes to the political sphere, do you think that Islam or the Islamicists are really going to make a big push? Obviously, we see some of them rising to power, but what do you think, Ben?
I think they're more low level. So I think what Islam accomplishes is it creates a clash of civilizations scenario that could then be exploited by the ruling class. And so they're basically just a bunch of useful idiots. You look at the problem, reaction, solution framework that they create. Well, how do you actually create a problem? As you import unassimilatable migrants to the West, they then go on their rape sprees and their crime sprees, and then that's when they can come in with globalism. That's when they can come in and they can establish what they want. So to me, Islam is just a low level. They are useful idiots. They are pawns.
Well, and this isn't a new thing. This is happening in Europe all over. I mean, Europe is 20, 30 years further down the pike on this. London, Paris. I don't know. I think those are the two big ones. Is there any other major cities that have more Muslim migrants than those two, Chase?
I mean, I'm not an expert on which cities have seen an influx of this, but it's basically happened to the entirety of the European Union with few exceptions. I mean, I know Berlin has struggled with this. Like you said, London, obviously France. And the Islam thing, frankly, hasn't been as much of an issue here in the United States of America because we had the benefit of the ocean. But when you have policies from Democratic lawmakers or deep states to just supply infinite numbers of refugee tickets to this country, ultimately that's what's going to happen. And I agree with you that they're not really politically active people. They're just kind of destructive, useful idiots, and that their vote isn't specifically the issue. But I will say that in terms of representation in the government, it does have a major impact because, we have the Ron DeSantis's and the Greg Abbotts bragging about how they're sending these migrants to sanctuary cities. But these sanctuary cities are primarily in blue states. And so if you send all of these people into these blue states and they're counted in the next census, regardless of their citizenship status, then that's disproportionate representation in the House of Representatives from Democratic states, right? And so that's what we saw happen in 2020 when they tried to put the question on the census of, are you a citizen or is anyone in your house not a citizen? And then Democrats, we can't do that. That's discriminatory. It's because they want the illegals to be counted in their census in the blue states like California and others to ensure that they have disproportionate representation. And so this is going to fuck up our country. Sorry, pardon my language. I know this is a Christian podcast. This is just how I speak. This is really going to mess up our country long term. And it's not just the Islam thing, but it's also the inbreeding component of it. Obviously, Sharia law is totally incompatible. And the real crux of this, in my opinion, I really think that most of our problems all boil down to the fact that our civilization is broken. One of the major 10 commandments, thou shalt not lie, which is, of course, thou shalt not bear false witness. But our entire money, our whole entire monetary system is a lie. And as a result of that lie, we are perpetually involved with these people, with this religion, in order to ensure that oil's traded in dollars. And so war is inevitably guaranteed continuously if we want to maintain our monetary system as it is in this region. And it's because as a nation, we're the 10 Commandments, just like the Sabbath, right? Man was not made for the Sabbath was made for man. Same with the 10 Commandments. It's like we weren't made to follow them. They were made for us so that we would be a more successful, prosperous, righteous, godly civilization or people, just regardless of our nationality. And when a nation on a national level violates so consistently as a matter of habit any of the 10 Commandments, then you pay the price of that. And I think that we're really paying in this country for the fact that our money's a lie.
Yeah, the money is definitely an issue, of course. And, if you ever try to fix that, Gaddafi might happen again. But when it comes to, other countries, I think, and I would have to look this up again, I think it's Ireland specifically that has had a major Muslim takeover in some of their government.
Yes, Muhammad's the most common name, I think, in many areas of Ireland of newborns.
Like that's so crazy to think about the Irish as, just being taken over by Muslims. And at the end of the day, Islam wants to take over. And I think it's kind of like in their mind, they think that they really can, but the powers that be know that they're just useful pawns. They're just pawns being moved around the chessboard to accomplish their goals of just destabilization, takeover of governments, like you said, Ben, easy to manipulate, take advantage of, and have kind of in their back pocket. being a Christian, being a Baptist, we believe that Jesus Christ will return at some point. There's going to be like an end times major event, Armageddon, these type of events. And the Bible does describe a time of just world war. I personally think it's very likely that if that were to happen in our lifetime, Islam would be what's eradicated in that first few years, this major war where the Antichrist leads a basic destruction towards Islam. And because the Bible says like pretty much everybody's going to like the Antichrist. And I could see, like myself included, someone trying to eradicate Islam, I would be kind of like, well, I kind of like that, even though it's the Antichrist, even as though somebody you shouldn't really be rooting for. And
do you think the Antichrist is an individual, or do you think the Antichrist is like a metaphor for like a whole movement or zeitgeist?
I think it's both in the sense the Antichrist is a person. It's also a spirit, though, because the Bible describes that there's many antichrists. So it's just kind of like a spirit of denying that Jesus is the Christ in general. But I do believe there is a person that will be the tip of the spear that is the Antichrist, and that he's going to essentially be riding the beast, which is the most powerful nation in the world at the time, which today would still be America. So it's very likely that if it happened anytime in the near future, that the Antichrist would somehow have gained power or influence over America and be leading it to essentially conquer the world, World War III, that's going to see the worst bloodshed that we've ever seen before. To me, getting rid of Islam now could just prevent these type of events from even happening. But you can't prevent it from ever happening. But I'm just simply saying, like, why I don't want to import Islam into America. It wasn't founded by Islam. It wasn't. We didn't bring in immigrants in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. I mean, America has been a Protestant nation, has been a Christian nation since the foundation, and even up to like the 1960s, it was pretty much predominantly 90% white, Protestant, evangelical type nation. It was a big deal that JFK was the first Catholic president ever. That kind of showed, some diversity. Then, of course, we have a large migration of Hispanic people in the next, few decades. And then now in the last 20 years, we've seen an explosion of everything. We've seen an explosion of Indians with Hinduism, Asians. We've seen an explosion of Islam. And, obviously some of these cultures integrate better. I mean, Asians really don't seem to cause a lot of problems in America.
I think you said Haitians, but go ahead.
Haitians? Oh, you said Haitians.
Well, he's right. Asians too. I mean, there's been a massive influx.
All of it.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. In World War II, we put Japanese people in internment camps. So there was a lot of anti-Asian sentiment in the past.
Yeah, and car accidents plummeted. That's my favorite conspiracy theory, that the kamikaze pilots weren't doing it on purpose. It was just bad Asian driving.
Bad airmanship.
You would think of typically the men as being the kamikazes, but the female drivers, that's where it's really scary. Yeah. So, but in Ben's countries, they don't let women drive, so they just they have to stay in the tent or whatever, ride on the camel.
You'll need to catch up.
But I mean, again, I'm not really I don't really care about people's culture. I'm more of a religious fanatic. So for me, if people were coming here,
that's fascinating. I'm the opposite.
Yeah. No matter what color, I don't really care so much as I care about, their reasoning for being here. And if they want to be here because of Christianity and the truth, then I think that would be a more beneficial immigration policy. I think that immigration should be very limited no matter what. I mean, from my perspective, I would think, we should limit it to the best and brightest when it comes to college education. It should be very limited in number. People coming for a specific job that they meet the qualifications for. I think that there was a suggestion that immigrants would have to pay even to necessarily get some of these higher jobs, or companies would have to pay a little bit higher premium for bringing in foreigners, things like that. But look, if you're not married to someone, if you don't have an actual job or a dwelling place, you shouldn't be able to just come over into our country. And additionally, if you look at older laws in our country, specifically, you could not buy property if you were a foreign citizen, if you were not part of that particular state or that city already. And to me, that makes sense. We shouldn't just be allowing foreign interests to buy up all our land, buy up all our houses, buy up all of our real estate. That's bad for America policy. And I'm very much America first. I'm not, I don't believe that we should have some globalist agenda when it comes to our immigration or our foreign policy. And asylum seekers, that should be a lot more scrutinized than it probably is today. I think a lot of people are flying into this quote asylum seeker that's not legitimate. But what do you think, Ben, on my foreign immigration policy? Do you kind of generally agree, you think, or?
I agree. I do think, though, when it comes to culture, you would agree, though, that there are some cultures that are better than others, and I would try to bridge the gap, I think, between you and Chase, in the sense that I do think that in some way, not always, of course, but in some ways, there is a coupling between culture and religion, in the sense that there could be a correlation between horrifying cultures and horrifying religions. Like, you look at a lot of Muslim countries, and we don't necessarily want to we don't want to import that culture here, but that's because of the coupling that it has with Islam. But culture, I think there's a connection there. But there definitely are some cultures that are better than others, and I will say this: the West is the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think you can get away from that. I don't want to import anything from Muslim culture. I don't know if I like absolutely anything. And even when we talk about other cultures, we bring in Chinese food. It's like we like Panda Express. That's not Chinese food. That's like Americanized Chinese food, right? So yeah, obviously we import things from other cultures on a micro scale, but we're the most exporting of our culture to the rest of the world in general.
Hollywood and all the rest of it.
Obviously false religion.
Just the English language.
Yeah,
the English language is a perfect example of how we've exported our culture.
You go anywhere, there's a McDonald's on pretty much every corner. I mean, you could go to pretty much any country, you're going to find McDonald's. You go into a department store, you're going to hear American rock and roll music, pop music. You're going to even buy American brands. American brand clothing, American brand vehicles sometimes. Actually, it's a lot more foreign imports probably, but Toyota and Honda and German manufacturing. But I mean, at the end of the day, I just don't want to import Islam. You kind of said that you have a different take on this. I'm kind of curious. Where do you disagree with me on this immigration policy idea?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I disagree with you, because I don't think that our two different perspectives are incompatible with one another. I just think that you're looking at it from importing the wrong faith. And like Ben said, I really tie faith and culture together. And I am a Western chauvinist. I believe the West is the best. But I think that it's totally in line with what you were saying, because I believe that Western civilization is largely founded on Christian values. I mean, if you look back at the documents that inspired our founding fathers to create this country, many of them were deists. Many of them were Christians. Most of them were Christians, but many of them were, just kind of God-believing, but not specific or agnostic about the details, right? But you look at how our Constitution or the Declaration of Independence was framed, a lot of it goes back to John Locke's Second Treatise of Government. His whole entire argument in the Second Treatise of Government is we were created by God, therefore everything we do with our bodies and our time is also our property because our bodies are our own property. And that was like the basis of private property rights and wealth of nations from Adam Smith. And this whole idea of capitalism literally came out of that one kind of Christian argument from Second Treatise of Government by John Locke. And so I would say that the reason Western civilization or culture is a superior culture is because it's founded upon religious ideals, theologies, or philosophies that are more in line with what's actually true. Similar to what I was saying earlier in this conversation about peoples or civilizations or cultures that are more in line with the 10 Commandments, plus the 11th, for Christian, tend to do better, right? It's one of the reasons why I think the Jewish people do so well no matter where they are. I know they've gone through some hard things. They do well because they follow the 10 Commandments. They don't get divorced. They honor their mother and father, so they're taking care of their elderly. They're just, when you follow those rules, regardless of whether you believe or not even, you're going to do better than somebody who doesn't follow those rules. And then you expand that out or scale that out to a national level on a trend, you're going to see completely different trajectories. So I would say that I am totally compatible or in line with importing people, regardless of their specific faith or lack of faith, into the United States of America, given that they fundamentally, philosophically believe in Western civilization or Western cultural values, because those values inadvertently practice, though not a perfect, they practice a form of Christianity. It's unfortunate that it's without the Christ part, right? And so I think we're kind of saying the same thing. We're just looking at it from two different angles,
My worry, though, is that when you even open the door, then you start to slowly degrade and get further and further away from actual, Christianity. and then you kind of get to where we are again today. When it comes to a verse that I thought of before the show, the Bible says the wicked shall be turned into hell and all the nations that forget God. And, you talked about why the ideals of the West are superior because they're closer to the truth. And that's the reality, that I do believe that our principles, government, and most of our, layout of construction of how our economy works is based on biblical principles. And that's why they're more successful. And to kind of talk about the point that you brought up, that's interesting, and I've thought about this as well, is that there are cultures, there are countries in this world that are not Christian whatsoever, yet they have better outcomes. And you kind of wonder, like, you look at Asian cultures, and let's compare that to Somalia for a moment, for just a second. Somalia's life expectancy is like 55 years old. Whereas you look at some Asian cultures, I think they have some of the highest life expectancy rates, over 80 years of age. And the Bible explicitly says in the 10 Commandments that if you honor your father and mother, your days will be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. And I do agree with you that regardless of someone being saved or being actual Christian, following the 10 Commandments is going to still yield a better result, period. And Asian cultures do have a lot more respect for their parents. They are more disciplined. They take lying and stealing, these type of things, more seriously. And so you kind of see even just that variation between two non-Christian cultures. You have a Muslim culture, you have an Asian culture, one's doing much better than the other. Yet, then again, American exceptionalism, America's still the cream of the crop because we actually have the truth, because we're actually saved, because we have the King James Bible, and that's what our nation was built on, and that's why I believe that we are successful. Importing Islam to me is insane. I think zero of our founding fathers would have ever tolerated or allowed this. Of course, they certainly wouldn't have paid for it. They would have not been paying to just import Muslims from Africa. They could have done it. It's not like there wasn't Muslims at the time that they founded our nation, but we're not just going to import randos into our country. It just makes no sense. And to me, again, it's a vicious cycle. You mean we're going to
pay them to come over here and we're not going to enslave them?
Yeah, exactly. What's the point? The point is that leftists and Democrats are so selfish and so evil that they vote in corrupt politicians who then take their tax dollars and give them to Somalians, importing them to continually make sure that they're going to have a voting class. Because even the leftists and the Democrats aren't so stupid that they could switch sides and actually start voting Republican. We actually saw in 2020 a mass shift of a lot of Democrats saying like, wow, this is a little bit bridge too far for me. Men are actually men. I can't believe that we think that Joe Biden's the most popular president in human history. I can't believe that you're trying to force us to get these COVID shots that you didn't test and you're not really allowed to talk about. And now we're singing songs on Conan O'Brien. And if you get a shot, you get a burger. Like they're just like, wow, something's off here. And so I think the Democrat Party lost a large section of their voter constituency, and they have to import it if they want to compete. And so that's the model that they're employing. I really think the Democrat Party is a facade. I think a lot of it's been fake for a long time. And I think that most people in America just are not pro-Democrat Party at this point. They have to import them. I mean, Ben, do you think that I'm kind of off on this? Do you think there really is still a large Democrat population out there?
No, they rig elections. They also import a loyal voting bloc that they can exploit for the election cycle. I'm curious, Chase, when it comes to, I think it's pretty obvious the left in 2024 was dealt a enormous blow with the election of Donald Trump. And I viewed it as basically further proof that the corporate media propaganda is not working, considering the fact that they tried to convince everyone that Trump belongs in prison and is a felon and all the rest of it, and yet he still wins the election. But what would be your 2025 report card for Donald Trump? We're the end of the year. We're kind of looking back now at the year. And if you could reflect a little on what he did, what would you say that you would kind of grade him as here?
Yeah. So if I were to grade the average president since 1950, I would probably give them like a 3 or a 4.
Out of 100?
Out of 10. Like,
okay.
If I'm being gracious. And if I were to grade Trump, I'd probably give him like a 6 or a 7. So I'm very critical of a lot of the things that Trump has done and a lot of the things that he's failed to do. However, I also appreciate and understand that he's twice as good, at least, as most of the presidents that we've had over the course of the last 75 years. So I'm not trying to be somebody who just kind of whines and moans about Trump not doing everything I wanted fast enough. But at the same time, he gets into office, he pardons all the J6ers, outstanding. He totally stops the bleeding at the border, outstanding. But fundamentally speaking, I'm not seeing justice on the Epstein files. And I know that's just one micro issue, but we were promised that. And then it didn't happen. And then he's weird about it. And then you've got the Marjorie Taylor Greens that are backing out. And we're not having like any progress on income tax. He was saying he was going to abolish. Maybe he will. He's still got 3 years left. I don't like our relationship or the nature of our relationship with Israel. And I don't want to be one of those guys that just talks about Israel. We don't have to talk about it. But I'm very concerned about the future of this country over the course of the next 30 years. And I don't think that the executive is being kinetic enough to solve these problems. Like, we have radical problems. We need radical solutions. And if these problems don't get solved by 2032, we're going to see very similar things, I think, in the United States of America in the 2030s that we saw in Germany in the 1930s. And I'm very much trying to avoid that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think the Pam Bondi is kind of a butchering personally.
Yeah. Cash sucks. Dan Bongino blew it.
Seems like his cabinet's just swamp creatures again, personally. Maybe they're less swamp creatures than before, maybe.
No, everything he said was legitimate in terms of a criticism, and for sure, I think he has proven himself to be beholden to the interests of a foreign country, that being Israel and Netanyahu. And additionally, the Epstein files was a complete and utter fumble, the way that was handled, and I think even to this day continues to be handled. So all that's legitimate.
It seemed like the Epstein files was almost a turning point, because he came into office, he stops the immigration, they start ramping up on deportations. People are kind of getting excited about that. We have the Doge, which I think a lot of people actually were kind of excited about. Hey, let's get rid of some of the government corruption. Let's try to actually make the government more efficient. Let's try to get rid of some of this excess spending. Trump made a lot of proclamations about censorship in media and talking about YouTube specifically and Facebook, and trying to hold these companies accountable and trying to, make free speech again. And it seems like when the Epstein files hit, it's like, we don't care about free speech anymore and government efficiency and just Epstein. I think he literally said Epstein files was a hoax, which was
at one point he said they didn't exist. Yeah.
Yeah, just so to me it's a fumbling. And then also, Chase, what's frustrating for me as a Trump voter, I voted for him in 2024. I think what's frustrating for me is that I feel politically homeless because of the fact that Donald Trump has made it clear that the people he wants to cater to are the Mark Levins and the Lindsey Grahams of the Republican Party. And
he just needs boots on the ground. I love wearing boots.
And then bashes like a Thomas Massey or something. That's the frustration I have. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's crass and it's obtuse, but like on the same hand, I'm not trying to just do ad hominems on Trump, because when he's crass and obtuse in a way that I agree with, I love it. But Thomas Massey's like a saint, not entirely effective in terms of new legislation, but that's because all the stuff that he wants to do, which is the right thing to do, nobody else in the political machine will ever let happen. So he's just kind of up there holding his seat saying, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, he's certainly principled.
Well, here's the thing. He's at least kind of like, keeping the Overton window from just shifting even further. I think that, even when you can't necessarily affect policy directly, people like Thomas Massey are always important and always valuable to stick to their guns, because you're just basically saying, hey, I don't want to just keep allowing the left to drag the right down the tunnel, down the Alice in Wonderland, black hole here, because we do need someone to basically say, hey, I do have a stopping point. Hey, I do have a boundary here. And I like Thomas Massey. I don't even think that he's really that radical or right-wing personally. He seems a little bit moderate from me personally.
He's like a Ron Paul.
But like compared to what's in the government right now, he's awesome. Like, I love Thomas Massey. I wish we had more people like him. I think he's like one of the only few politicians that seems to even say anything negative about Israel. And even what he says is pretty mild in my estimation. But I think that the social media censorship was supposed to be reverse course, but after they've seen just a rise in Israel criticism, asking a lot of questions, pointing out a lot of just uncomfortable truths about our relationship with Israel, how many of our politicians have AIPAC influence, how many people in our government are actually just Jewish, dual citizens, just the unholy alliance that exists in our government, that Trump's not really into free speech as much anymore. He doesn't want to necessarily just unleash the hound. I think that, it would be dangerous. You brought up, what happened in Germany. If we had free speech, do you think that would escalate that even more? Like, I'm saying free speech in the sense that YouTube is just like it was in 2009.
I think the censorship makes it worse.
Interesting.
I really do.
It
I think the
radicalizes people.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that Alex Jones is so successful right now, and one of the reasons that Nick Fuentes is so successful right now, is because they were both so incessantly, brazenly, aggressively, brutally censored for so long that it created an aura of intrigue, and it turned that form of media into rock, like punk rock. Fuentes, man. When I was a kid, Fuentes would not have been cool. Everyone would be like, "Shut up, nerd." Now he's cool as fuck. Like, I actually feel that way. I think I only agree with maybe 70% of what he says even. But he's rock and roll. It's like Generational Run, the memes, the edits. It's all hysterical. It's so funny to see the troll. And all of that is because I feel like I'm getting some justice for like what I saw happen to me and my friends and my peers and my political views and all the censorship that happened during the pandemic when people were saying, hey, these vaccines are terrible for you. Scientists, incredible people, many of them formerly Democrats or even still Democrats, like the Weinsteins and others, right? Coming out and saying, look, something's wrong here. And so then you start rooting for these underdogs, like the Alex Joneses who've been sued for $1.2 billion. Like, it's part of the reason he's so successful now is because they sued him so hard. If they would have just ignored him, he still would have been successful, but not like at this rock and roll American icon level. I mean, kids 100 years from now are going to have posters of Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes up in their room, given that we still have a civilization at all. And so I don't think that free speech, to answer your question really directly, I don't think that free speech, opening up the gates to free speech, will catalyze like a National Socialist Nazi thing. I think what catalyzes that is unjust suffering among young men for an extended period of time without a clear reason why. And so what we saw in Germany after World War I, we had this terrible Treaty of Versailles. Everybody knows all the reparations were terrible. It wasn't really Germany's fault that the war broke out in the first place. They were blamed for it. They were humiliated. They were repeatedly occupied when they failed to pay their reparations and slapped around. There's footage of French troops slapping German citizens in the face, in the time period after World War I. I mean, just total brutal humiliation. Wheelbarrows full of cash in order to buy one loaf of bread. Famous clips of wallpaper being made out of like Deutschmarks and using it to burn for kindling to heat up their homes. Such suffering for like a decade straight. And the Nazi Party started losing its influence in the late 1920s because the Roaring '20s were happening and there was a global impact of that, and things started getting a little bit better. They started losing their influence. Only 1 out of every 40 Germans was actually a National Socialist, self-identifying in like 1928. Then the stock market crashes, international, global, Great Depression, and then in 1933 they seize all political power and all of their parties are literally outlawed, right? And so what I'm fearing here in the United States is I'm fearing that Trump isn't doing all the things that we expected him to do. And maybe it wasn't possible for him to do them. I'm not even trying to knock him. And as a result of that, I think there's going to be less enthusiasm in these midterms coming up next year in 26. And so Democrats will take back either the House or the Senate or both, right? And then as a result of us not having all three sections of the government, House, Senate, and executive, things will get worse between 26 and 28. And then everyone will blame President Trump if things don't get better, right? Because he's the president of the United States, he's a Republican. Then we'll elect some radical in 28, we'll have some massive economic crash between 28 and 32. And I could see how easy it would be for like a Hitlerian type person to come to power in 1932, inaugurated in 2033. right? And so
I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. Number one, the Republican Party seems to be in disarray a little bit. And while the Democrat Party is in disarray, it was always a party of disarray. It was just the garbage pail kids. It was just a leftover of just anything and everything that just hates the right. And so they're still there. The problem with the Republican Party is there's no momentum anymore. There's not really a leader anymore. It seems like there's a big fight over Israel. A lot of people feel disenfranchised, like you said. And I agree. If you take a bunch of young men and they don't have good jobs, they don't have women to marry, they don't have families to raise, they're being pushed around. It's not good for me to be alone. Yeah, they're being pushed around. They're being told that they're evil and they're wicked and they're the problem in society. You see people maybe being out of church, so they don't have a sense of community. They don't have a sense of purpose. They don't have a sense of anything. Then it makes them dangerous. You see them being pushed around by Muslim hordes and low IQ immigrants. It's just going to continually escalate. It could be bad. I really have a feeling in my mind. I'm like, I don't know how Republicans are going to win anything anymore. I have a feeling like the Democrats are going to just destroy the midterms. And from a political perspective of like a presidency, the Republicans barely win, if they do. Without Trump as kind of this lightning rod force to drag a lot of moderates and a lot of people over on the side, I don't see a right-wing candidate having a chance to win. Even within the moderate party, I don't see America getting out and getting excited to vote for J.D. Vance. You have people like Nick Fuentes getting popularity. Is Fuentes going to really throw his hat behind someone like J.D. Vance? I don't think so. Even if he was the quote lesser of two evils or whatever argument people make, I don't know. I mean, politically, it seems like we're in a dangerous time beyond Trump. Ben, what do you think about this?
I don't know what the future holds. Ron DeSantis, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio. I mean, these are the names that pop up, that come to mind, that may take over, grab that mantle. And to me, none of those names, and Chase, it's okay if you have a different view, we welcome it. But for me, it's just none of those names really excite me very much at all. Especially Marco.
They're all just kind of fags. And I don't mean it. I mean it in the 8th grade sense of the term. It's just like, mush. And let me put it to you this way, man. And I think a lot of people feel this way, the way that I do. I am somebody who is, at least over the course of the last several years, not so much in the last couple months, but over the last several years, I have paid incredibly close attention to politics. I've read all the Ayn Rand. I've read the Bible. I've studied theology. I've cared about it and deeply wanted it integrated into our culture and our civilization. I've read Wealth of Nations and John Locke's Second Treatise of Government. And I've been involved in the political frame. I worked for Infowars and I fought like hell for Trump to get elected. I mean, I am an example of somebody who is the opposite of like an average American who does their 9 to 5, watches a football game, has a couple of beers, goes to bed, and looks up a candidate a week before the election. Right? I'm somebody who really pays attention to these people. I've got a lot of them in my phone. I could text Bobert right now if I wanted to. I could text Pam Bondi if I wanted to. I would say my point I'm trying to make is, as someone who cares deeply about politics, pays attention, and actually has an interest in them, I think I've only got a 40% chance of even voting in the midterms. Because for what? I don't think I'm going to vote, man.
I feel like everybody feels disenfranchised. Number one, people are just still, I think, jaded about the election fraud that never got resolved. I think number two, I think people have been paying attention to politics more in the last decade than they did the previous 2 decades. I think that it seemed more important to people. And I think because they got a little bit closer look, they recognized how much politicians lie, how much they promise and underdeliver. And even with Trump, you could say, hey, he got a scorecard of 6 out of 10, which is better than a lot of past presidents. But for most people, they just never really paid attention, and they just still think 6 out of 10 is kind of a failing score. It's still a 60 on the exam. And so for them, I think that a lot of people are just thinking like, why do I want to get so invested in this and get behind somebody and not get what I wanted, and then even the things they said they're not going to do. I think politically people don't even really understand why our country even exists, what the Declaration of Independence even stands for, why we even have the separation of branches of government. I think that our education levels at an all-time low. I think that people could be ready for more radicalized ideals. And I don't want that personally. Like, I don't think that that's necessarily what we need. I think that our government's fine. It's just we have bad people in these positions because our culture has gotten so far away from truth and reality. And of course, obviously, immigration's hurting that immensely. I'm trying to bring the Baptist bias to the world because I think that that is a cure. That's a fix, albeit it's not going to necessarily spread like wildfire. But we need more Thomas Masseys and Ron Pauls in this world politically. And wouldn't it be great if Ron Paul was just like 20 years younger or something, and we could maybe get excited about him again? I just don't see anybody
20 years
like
ago and nothing happened. Let me ask you this, though. We're talking about blocking, Islam. I totally agree with that. We're talking about the Baptist bias. I even agree with that. I'm not a Baptist, but I'm close enough, right? Have you seen an uptick in baptisms? Are you Duncan?
I would say that it seems like the world was getting less receptive all the way up to 2020. And then with COVID, It kind of got receptive again. We kind of saw a spike. I think with the Charlie Kirk assassination, honestly, it did cause a lot of people to become more spiritually focused, more faith focused. Our church specifically has had the best year we've ever had by far. It's just in terms of just like salvations and baptisms and attendance, and we've been growing crazy. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know that my personal experience is necessarily reflective of everyone. I think by and large, a lot of people are walking away from church. And I think that churches are on the decline and have been for several decades. So I don't know what to think about America from a bigger perspective. I mean, what do you think, Ben?
I think there's more people searching for truth out there because they see the wickedness going on in Washington, D.C., the wickedness of our leaders and how satanic and evil and bloodthirsty they are. So they're looking around for an answer. A lot of them are searching for the Lord Jesus Christ. They're searching for a good church. Some aren't finding it. Others are. But I think that there has been an uptick, at least from my perspective, just kind of a cursory overview of what I've seen on social media, is that there has been an uptick in people that are at least interested in searching for something, searching for some spiritual truth out there.
Yeah, I think that's why Fuentes is popular. And, Catholicism has been on the rise. I'd have to say, Candace, I think she converted to Catholicism because of her husband. Fuentes is a Catholic. I think that we see a larger push to go to like some traditional views. And, I'm not Catholic. I'm not pro-Catholic personally. Like, I have the Baptist bias. It's pretty obvious. But I do think that there is a lot of people searching and seeking. I don't know about from your perspective. Do you think that you see a lot of people just kind of being more spiritual or less spiritual? What is your kind of view on this?
I think a lot of people are becoming more spiritual. I've got a lot of friends that, were just like the secular friends, and they're going to church now. And even like you can see it, like the Joe Rogan's a good example. He doesn't really talk about it a bunch, but he's been going to church. And this is somebody who is very skeptical of religion vocally, and for good reason. I mean, there's a lot of dogma, and there's something wrong with every church, and there's something wrong with every denomination. It's just inherent, when you have it. But I think one of the things that maybe my theology's way off on this, but I was a member of a church that had a lay ministry when I was growing up. And when I was in high school, after I got baptized, I baptized people myself, somebody of deep faith. And I think that Christianity made a big mistake. I'm not pointing fingers at whose fault it was, whether it was the Catholics, whether it was other denominations. I think we need to re-engender a culture of, hey, like, Jesus said, go and baptize nations in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And he wasn't just talking to pastors or priests. Like, we're all supposed to be disciples who do that. And I think a lot of people feel like it's not their place to convert someone to Christianity because they're not in a formal position of authority in a church or a denomination, or they're not accredited or certified. They're not experts, right? And I just wish every Christian would baptize people. It'd solve a lot of problems, right? What are your thoughts on that from a theological perspective?
Well, I don't think there's anything in the Bible condemning lay people doing baptisms. but like just our church's policy, we only have like ordained people doing baptisms. But more important than baptism is salvation itself. And so, we encourage our entire church to go out and preach the gospel actively, and we do outward soul winning. So we go out into our neighborhoods and into our states, small town soul winning events, mission trips. We've gone to the Bahamas last year. We go into the schools. We have a church plant in the Philippines that's going into the schools, and they're preaching the gospel. And, we have 9-year-old, children going out and preaching the gospel. We have, women that are pregnant going out in the highways and hedges and preaching the gospel. So I think that everyone should be involved in evangelism and preaching the gospel specifically. Like our church's, viewpoint is like baptisms are the second step, and that, we have, ordained people doing that. But I know other churches, non-denominational churches. I have friends and stuff that they practice what you said. And like, I'm not going to fight that. I personally am not like against it, but I just don't, we just don't practice that. Cause here's my concern a little bit is you say, hey, anybody can baptize. So then now this like 5 or 6 year old kid who just got saved, this 5 or 6 year old little girl is going to go out and just start randomly baptizing tons of people, and maybe she doesn't necessarily know what she's doing. She doesn't necessarily understand her faith fully, and then it's kind of like it becomes confusing a little bit. Maybe it's not as organized. Right. So I'm just saying, like,
sexual consent, there should be an age of baptismal consent.
I'm just saying, like, practically speaking, it sounds like a wild, wild west, a little bit too much anarchy for me. But like,
I know, but the Mormons, man, like, perfect example. It's a pretty ridiculous interpretation of Christianity, right? And it's got its own addendum.
It's just a cult.
It's a cult, right? But they kick ass because they make everybody knock on doors for a couple of years when they come of age, And I just wish that. I don't know. I just wish we had that.
They're crazy because they make their 18-year-old kids pay. They have to pay money to go on their missionary journey for like 2 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And these people are dedicated. You can't knock Mormons for not being dedicated and sincere and being willing to be countercultural. The problem is that they're wrong on salvation. They have the wrong Bible. They have the wrong view of Jesus Christ. So
yeah, it's retarded. But
obviously, their founder was a pedophile.
I'd rather be Mormon than Muslim.
That's a tough choice, but here's what's funny: is it's like the same religion because both of their prophets. Well, yeah, both of their prophets were visited by an angel, told that the Bible's corrupt. They both had multiple wives. They both banged little kids. They're both pedophile religions, and they're both very
not so much anymore the Mormons though.
Cults. Yeah, I mean, obviously the Mormons have been forced into compliance because of America, but they were a polygamous society for a very long time. They were pushed around, moved around all over America. Obviously, that's why they ended up in Utah specifically. Mormons nowadays, though, a lot of them are still involved in mafias and gangs and cartels and all kinds of crazy, shady things. They're a satanic cult. Is my personal
satanic?
Yeah, I think it's a satanic cult. Is my view on Mormons, and like I actually was crazy. I actually was pro Romney when he was running for office because I didn't even know he was a Mormon, and I just thought like, hey, we need
that
Romney.
Haircut, bro. That smile, he's got.
He was a well-spoken
he's excited
politician.
for his whole planet.
I was just so against Obama and just their agenda and stuff like that I was like pro Romney. I think I might even voted for him. Did you vote for Romney, Ben?
No.
Were you like 12 or something? I can't remember.
It wasn't because I was too young.
All right.
I think there's an important sentiment here, though, that I don't want to get lost in the discussion and the back and forth between you guys. It is something Chase had mentioned, like, well, these Mormons go out and they knock doors, and we don't really see that with like actual Christians. And I think that's a very, very important point because a lot of the cults will be adamant about what they believe and unashamed about what they believe, and they will take it to the doorstep and they will go and talk to people and interact with the culture, whereas a lot of actual Christians will not do that. They just kind of hide. They're ashamed. They don't want to be outspoken about what they believe. They certainly won't talk about it online or anything like that, sort of like this platform, and that is a problem, and that's something we're trying to fix as a church and some of our friends' churches as well. And I think another issue with Christianity, Chase, is that it certainly has become very watered down, and many of them have lost their teeth. And here's what I mean by that. This attitude of just like You must love every single human being, no matter what, unconditionally, even like a devil worshiper like
Tim
Hillary
Walz.
Clinton or Tim Waltz, Hillary, these evil, disgusting predators. Chase, something you said on a live stream this was like months and months ago, caught my eye, in my ear, I guess. And you had said, and again, please feel free to correct me if I'm misrepresenting you or anything, but I remember you saying like, there's these evil, rotten people in government like a Hillary and these kind of folks. It's like, I'm just going to be honest, I hate them. And, I think that you're just like expressing what every normal person feels. But this idea of hatred always being wrong, it's not something we believe in. I think we could ground that with scripture. But what's your thoughts on that concept?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's no commandment that says thou shalt not hate. You shouldn't be hateful for the sake of it. You should be loving.
Sure.
But there's a certain point, in which you got to stop loving the devil. Like, there's a certain level of evil I think that people cross with no repentance in their heart or no hope whatsoever, where they've totally lost their soul. Where, as Christians, it's not our duty to love them or try to save them anymore. We just have to hate them. And
Amen.
look,
Amen.
it's reckless and it's dangerous. Hating is like loving, in that it shouldn't be something. Hating is like getting married. Like, you should be very thoughtful and prudent about who you hate, who you get married to. It's a commitment. It's a big, powerful emotion. It's counterintuitive for people, especially since we've got this Star Wars culture where hate leads to the dark side or whatever. But no, 100%. I hate many of these people. I don't want to, murder them in the streets. I'd like to see them have a trial and a jury by their peers and then be hanged after they're found guilty. But Hillary Clinton, I hate her. I hate Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. I would even go so far as to say I hate Justin Trudeau, probably Mark Carney, maybe a little bit of Keir Starmer. I hate most of the Democratic Party and leadership, not the voters. They're just retarded. I love them. But, you're right. Lovingly. But yeah, dude, I'm trying to like not swear so much because it comes off crass to other people. But I fucking hate so many of these people. And I think that as Christians, we should lean into that, but not allow it to consume our reason. They say that,
Sure.
Faith when reason sinks exhausted. And I would say hate when reason sinks exhausted. But yeah, I mean, if you don't hate evil, man, then even Jesus, right, in the Bible, get behind me, Satan. Like, that was a moment of hate, like just despising someone, that you love and you care about and that's on your team. But you have to hate these moments of evil and darkness.
Yeah, anybody that can read Matthew 23 and walk away and not think that Jesus didn't hate the Pharisees is just denying reality. I mean, he's calling the Pharisees serpents, vipers. He says they're the children of the devil. He says that they're children of hell. He says that they can't escape the damnation of hell. I mean, the Bible couldn't be more crystal clear on this issue. The Bible does say there's a time to love and a time to hate. My explanation is typically that the more you love, the more you're going to hate. And the thing is, the more I love my children, the more I'm going to hate anyone that would harm my children. The more I love America, the more I'm going to hate anybody that would be an enemy to America. The more I love my wife, the more I'm going to hate anybody that would try to harm or attack my wife. And here's the thing, the more I love God, the more I would hate things that are the enemies of God and the haters of God. And what you described...
This is why I'm pro-hate speech.
Yeah, exactly. and what you described is what I would call the reprobate doctrine. And the Bible brings up that word multiple times in the text. It talks about people that have a reprobate mind, people that have gone past the chance of even being saved.
I've heard Alex allude to the reprobate mind, by the way, just saying. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's a reality. And, there's some people that can't be reasoned with. I mean, our American terrorist policy used to be we don't negotiate with terrorists for a good reason. There's some people that cannot be negotiated with, that cannot be reasoned with. Unfortunately, that's mostly the Democrat leadership at this point. And at the same time, we as Christians have been snipped by a lot of false teaching and false preaching that's existed in America for a long time, saying that you can't love anyone or you can't hate anyone. Anybody. You have to love everyone, love everything, and everybody's a victim, and just come on here, come as you are. Whereas the Bible says, hey, some people shouldn't even be welcomed in church, and at the end of the day, I'm not against any specific individual, because we should have grace towards all at first, and we should want to give the gospel to every creature. The Bible says preach the gospel to every creature. But at the same time, after multiple rejections of the gospel and clear evidence of the fact that this person's evil, they need to be dealt with appropriately. And our founders had no problem with this. Our founders did have capital law punishments for virtually all the major sins in the Bible.
Christianity was literally founded on capital punishment.
Amen. And again, some people think that that's extreme, but Britain was worse. Britain had like 150 capital law punishments approximately. America really only had like 13 to 18, which were based strictly on the text. Whereas in Britain, it's like you just looked at the king wrong, off with his head. At least in America, we recognize, hey, you can say the king sucks and we're not going to kill you. But you can't go out and be a murderer. You can't be a rapist. You can't commit, incest and all these like extreme, like horrific crimes that are mentioned in the Bible and get away with it. And yet in our society today, pedophilia is no longer a death penalty offense. I think the Supreme Court had ruled that you no longer can you put pedophiles to death or something like this. But I thought that Florida had recently maybe passed legislation. I don't know if this is conflicting or not. I'm kind of curious. Do you know much about, I think didn't Florida pass something about under the age of 12, a rape of a minor is now a capital punishment?
I remember something about that, but I can't specifically attest to it. I can certainly tell you that I believe that anybody who has been unequivocally convicted beyond reasonable doubt of abusing a child, and especially under the age of 12, pedophile literally meaning prepubescent. I mean, that's
right.
It's not like sleeping with some 17-year-old that looks like she's 21. I mean, we're talking about molesting children here.
Exactly.
That aren't even supposed to know what sex is or have sexual feelings yet. I 100% believe that those people should be killed. And frankly, what should happen is if you're convicted of sexually abusing a prepubescent child, I think that there should be a lottery where everybody can pay $5 and the families of the victim get first dibs. And every time you put $5 in, your name gets put into the hat, and then they draw names for who gets to be in the firing squad. They would raise so much money. I would be throwing money like and then like if I won, it would be like if I won $1 billion, it'd be like I get to shoot the pedophile, like, and they do it publicly in the street, like that should be the mentality. But then you have these queers coming out saying, oh, just minor attracted persons, it's its own sexual persuasion, it's a sexual orientation, they were born that way. Lady Gaga's freaking out, you can't shoot them in the streets. I'm like, meanwhile, there's some like 11-year-old little girl who's scarred for life because of what happened to her by her uncle. I'm thinking to myself, which one's what's the loving thing to do? Do we honor this sexual persuasion of these minor attracted people, or do we love the child victim and assassinate, eliminate, eradicate the pedophilia? I mean, and we know that the pedophilia
sounds like a bullet attracted
too.
person to me.
Pedophilia begets pedophilia. You're exactly right about that. They can't reproduce, so they recruit.
Yep.
Yeah, I have no problem with what you said. I've personally preached and said that I would just do it for free. If Texas would just bring back the capital punishment law, they don't even need to hire anybody for execution. I'll just go ahead and volunteer my services because someone needs to implement this policy. And, it's kind of sad. It's sad that our government is not concerned with ridding itself of evil, but rather protecting it, hiding it, obfuscating it, saying the Epstein files don't even exist. They're a hoax, redacted. This is off-putting to most American citizens. I think that the general populace, pretty much, I would say like 90% of America could probably all get on board with executing pedophiles, like you said, of a prepubescent nature. Someone under that kind of a young age. And again, with that type of mentality, how is Islam compatible when Muhammad is with Aisha, who's 9 years old? That's just part of their religion. That's part of their history. Joseph Smith also had many, wives, some that were very young. I think it's disgusting. It's gross. Most people are so repulsed by this. I mean, Joseph Smith, they hated him so much, they just ran into the jail and just threw him out the window and just killed him because they just,
that's what I'm talking about.
It's just like,
whatever happened to that?
Well, it used to be a lot of Christians that actually, believed the word of God and were hating.
Like I can tell you right now, if somebody abuses my kids and I know 100% that that's what happened, I'm gonna fucking kill him.
What about the epic guy at the airport? The epic guy who
what is this?
He's just sitting there on the payphone.
Help me out with that. What is this?
You've never seen this clip?
No.
I don't know if our crew could find it or something, but the best clip ever. This dad's boy, I think it was his son. His son was molested by a pedophile, by a fag, and he's being escorted through the airport. The dad's just like conspicuously at a like a payphone, just pretending like he's on a call. As soon as the fag walks by, he just turns around, just blows his head off, and. I'm pretty sure he walked. Like, I'm pretty sure they didn't even convict him on it because it's like, what jury wants to convict a dad?
I think the jury found him not guilty.
Yeah, exactly.
I think he might have been charged, but the jury's like, no, this guy can go home.
Yeah. Can we give him a high five? Like, he's like Kyle Rittenhouse. I mean, just give him a high five and just tell him to go home. You know, it's just like people, you know, back then at least. I mean, was this 90s maybe? I don't know. I'd have to look it up, but somewhere maybe around the 90s or something this happened.
Wow.
Culture still was like, hey, pedophiles just deserve.
Look, and every once in a while you're going to get the wrong guy and you're going to kill an innocent person, but at least all the bad ones die.
There's always a casualty to anything you do. You know, there's victims on either side. The question is not if there's victims. The question is how many victims, who are the victims? And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, this is why I'm with like no fault divorce. It's like people will find a situation where they'll say, well, what about that one woman who's just getting beat up by her husband?
If your daughter was raped, you would make her have the child?
Right.
You know,
but instead of that one victim, we kill 60 million babies, right? So it's like on one side, it's a handful of women that had a horrific situation. And then the other side, it's 60 million dead babies. It's like you got a couple battered wives on one side, and then you got just thousands of men committing suicide because their wife left them, took all their money, is banging some other dude, and he has to pay alimony. He has to pay his wife money to sleep with another man, and she has rights to the kids, and so he just wants to blow his brains out because he's like, why do I have to pay for my wife to sleep with another dude? You know, no fault divorce is just wicked as hell, you know, by my estimation, and I hate it. You know, to me, I don't even understand anymore. Most people aren't even getting married. It's like, why can't we just make marriage like this, you know, for the people that actually believe in marriage real again? And that would actually fix a few things. But again, like you said, they don't want us to start populating. They don't want us to start having a lot of children and taking back our country. They want to import, you know, migrants that they can be easily manipulated and taken advantage of. So it's crazy.
But what you brought up there, Chase, about, oh, well, what about, you know, the daughter is raped? This is this idea of like bringing up these super fringe scenarios that are extremely rare. There's an infinitesimal chance that it's actually going to happen. Yet they bring it up as an argument, as if it's like this, you know, extremely common thing to try to discredit what you're saying. And it's just garbage. You know, I'm sick and tired of people doing that. They do it in almost every. It doesn't matter which category. People bring these rare situations that barely ever happen, as if it refutes our point when it doesn't.
Well, and the first thing that comes to mind, the best counter argument to that specific fringe argument is, oh, so you're gonna kill your grandkid because your daughter suffered a trauma. Nobody ever frames it like that. Yeah. We argue about life beginning at conception, but then we don't use the language of like, that's your grandkid. You're killing your innocent grandkid because your daughter suffered. That's the first thing. And the second of all, it's like, why are we even arguing about that very specific fringe issue of the pro-life argument when we should at least agree upon the fact that whoever raped your daughter should be executed?
Yeah, put the rapist to death. Put the rapist to death, not the baby.
Yeah.
It's crazy that that's where the argument's not even like being had, considering that we're not doing it. Obviously, if we were doing it, then okay. But I'm just saying, like, why?
Let's start executing rapists before we argue about the nuance of abortion.
Right. It's like, should we kill the baby or not? Well, the rapist, we already know. We've already solved that issue. Like, put him to death.
He only got 7 years. Like, what the fuck? You know, that's the tragedy here.
Yeah, the tragedy is that rape is just tolerated so much in society in that particular scenario, and again. In colonial America, this is the death penalty. I mean, you can't commit these kind of crimes and exist in a Christian society. In Europe, though, you know, and again, I'm not there, I'm not on the street, but you hear a lot of reports of Muslim men going and just raping people, and there's no accountability. The police are not getting involved. The Muslims get to police themselves, essentially. They've taken over sections of the city and have their own Sharia law. They have their own basically like mini government. It's like
we saw
Indian
what happened to Laura
reservations
Logan
over.
in Egypt. You guys know what happened to Laura Logan in Egypt?
I don't know what happened.
Laura Logan, she's a
News reporter,
famous
right?
news reporter. She worked for Fox back then or CNN. I can't remember who she worked for. She was in a 60 Minutes interview. This was 15 years ago. She was in Egypt reporting on, I think it was Arab Spring stuff.
Yeah.
And she got raped by like, I don't know, dozens of Egyptian men. Like, right in, I think it was Cairo.
I heard about
she was
this.
like in the capital or something. And
Wasn't she on the air and then they started grabbing her and things like that? Or am I mixing that up with something else?
that's exactly what happened.
That was it. Yep.
Dang.
Yep.
Yeah. She's on
she
the
was
air
on the
reporting,
air, and then they went
guys
off.
start
They
grabbing.
weren't live anymore, but the guy was still recording, and they tried to escape because the translator was like, "Hey, it's not safe for you anymore," because he was overhearing some of the comments some of the men were making, and the Muslims were claiming that she was Jewish, and she's like Hitler's wet dream. Like, she's not Jewish. She's Laura Logan's blonde blue, right? And yeah, they just used that as an excuse to sodomize and abuse her. She had to go to the hospital. She was saved by a Muslim woman, actually, as I understand it. And she's somebody who I consider to be a friend. But this is something that happens just incessantly and disproportionately in these Muslim countries, dude. It's trash.
That's crazy. Well, and again, when it comes to these issues, it's important to have some unity, at least on these type of issues. But even on the right, I think that there is there's some heat. And I've noticed, from y'all's network, and I don't know if you can speak on this or not, but Ben had a clip, and I don't know if we want to play it, but I guess Alex has kind of gone nuclear on Candace or something like that. Do we want to play
That's
that
what
clip?
I've heard.
Let's just play the clip and just see what he said, because I don't want to like speak out of turn here. I think it's clip number A. I want to hear this.
Let me give Candace Owens a little news flash here. Bitch, you don't fucking sit up there on some hill and tell me who ate the cabbage. You don't sit there and tell me what to give you or what to do. You are suspect. You have the left boosting you, the left loving you, the left promoting you with your royal husband, who we're about to expose. So get ready for that, George. So we figured you out. We got your number, and you can't stand the fact that you've run this big psyop and now it's coming to an end. This isn't about protecting TPUSA or Trump or anybody. It's about protecting the truth. And it's about us not sitting there dancing to the Pied Piper's lie of what you've done.
Well, thanks for that clip, Ben.
Oh, that's great.
You know what I love about Alex? And I don't even know if I agree with him on this issue. I frankly don't care about the Candace issue. But what I love about Alex is that regardless of whether I agree or disagree with what he says, it's always just awesome.
It's just so entertaining.
What was that
I'm with
expression
you.
that he used about the cabbage at the beginning of the clip? I've never even heard. What does that even mean? You don't tell me who's got the cabbage on the hill, or what did he say? What the fuck is that expression? I'm sure it's a real one too. It's like an old expression from Texas or something. But like, it's funny because I've got Candace's husband in my phone. It's King George. So when I heard him saying that,
I mean, I find Alex is funny, even if I agree or disagree. So I definitely, think that some of our most, favorite clips in our crew are some of Alex, some of his talking rants. He just goes on
Magellan
some
rants, man.
And
That's a classic.
he's definitely gifted in just high level emotion.
He's been touched by God, dude. I'm convinced.
He's definitely unique, and he's been screaming a lot of different things for a long time. So touch on a point that you made earlier. I do think that Alex had a hard time fitting in with the mainstream for the longest. They were able to kind of keep him ostracized. Like, here's this wacko, tinfoil hat wearing, crazy person, and then with all the COVID stuff and with the Sandy Hook, court case and all this other stuff, it seemed like he got pushed into the mainstream. It's almost like they had the opposite effect. Like, they tried to shut down Infowars. They tried to just totally take it. Well, The Onion was going to supposedly buy it for a day or something like this. And now, honestly, you can't get rid of him. I think Alex is more mainstream than he's ever been right now, and that he doesn't seem to be fading either. But with this war with Candace, like even if they do go to war, I just see both sides getting even bigger from these kind of things. What is your kind of perspective?
They both fucking know that.
Well, I think in general,
I mean?
Yeah.
I think in general, going back to what you guys were saying earlier, is that when you try to tell people this guy's dangerous, this guy's bad, don't listen to him, we're going to ban him off of Facebook, we're going to ban him off of Twitter, we're going to ban him off of YouTube, it creates intrigue, it creates interest. And actually what it does is it makes it so that that person becomes countercultural. And you cannot tell me that today in 2025 America, being a conservative, straight-laced Christian, somebody who just wants to go back to traditional values, that is not countercultural. It has become countercultural. It has become the new rock and roll. And all these people are accomplishing is just making these personalities cool.
It's the Barbara Streisand effect, right?
Yeah, well, the Ramones did something similar. I don't mean to cut you off. But I believe it was the Ramones, famously for one of their tours, like one of their first tours, one of those punk bands from the 80s or 90s. They, as a marketing stunt, blocked all of traffic with like a van on a major highway in Chicago or New York or LA. I can't remember where it was. And they had like a sign that said, the Ramones at whatever venue at whatever time. And it was like helicopters were flying around at this traffic block, with you could see the sign all on TV. Everybody's parents, all the kids' parents that lived in the town were so pissed off at that band that it made all the kids want to go to the concert. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's very true. And I mean, even like you said, with Fuentes was not really that popular, but just kind of became the guy that you're not allowed to talk about. And I think a little bit that helped make him cool. It helped him become somebody that a lot of people wanted to just hear what he had to say. And he got to do the tour of interviews, and he's done Tucker now. Obviously, he's been on Alex's show several times, so he's getting a lot of popularity. For me, though, when it comes to these people getting popularity, I hope that doesn't change the message. And, for me, like, I don't know. I don't follow Fuentes or some of these other people that much, but, like, when it comes to Candace, like, if we look at Candace today and we look at Candace a few years ago when she was on Ben Shapiro's show, we're talking about a very different person. And, I'm just kind of curious, like, is every single one of these people sincere? Like, is she really sincere about this messaging, or is she just on the next kick of what's going to make her popular? It kind of makes me leery, I guess, of these people who have radical changes in their ideology. At least Alex has been pretty consistent. I would even say Fuentes has probably been pretty consistent. Candace specifically has been kind of all over the place. I don't know what your perspective is on this. Obviously, I want to allow people to change, but I still get a little bit nervous when people are just all over the place.
Man, I honestly just don't know Candace, so I couldn't tell you. I know Ian Carroll very well. I consider Ian Carroll to be a close friend, and he knows Candace, and I can tell you that he genuinely trusts and admires Candace, but I can't say directly. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you whether she's right or wrong, whether she's lying intentionally or in grifting. I couldn't tell you, man. All I know is that Alex Jones, everybody was saying he was crazy and he was wrong 30 years ago, and he turned out to be right about all the major things that he claimed, with the exception of maybe one. And maybe that's true with Candace. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, I trust Alex Jones 100%. I know that if he's anything, he's not a liar. So if he's wrong about Candace, it's not because he's making it up. What he says on air is what he really means. And he's more intense off air than he is on air. I mean, I can tell you the first time I ever met Alex, I'd been working at Infowars for a couple of weeks. It wasn't the first time I ever met him, but it was the first time I ever interacted with him, not like, being on his show as a guest. And he came into my office and he's like, "Man, can you believe the shit the New World Order is trying to do?" I was like, "Dude, you're not on air." Like the first thing he said to me, he's like, "It's crazy, man." He was like, I was getting my own personal broadcast. And then at that moment I realized, all right, this is just who Alex is, man. So look, I'm not going to knock Candace because I don't know her well enough to make a claim that I'm confident in. But I'm certainly going to support Alex because I do know him well enough to know that whatever he says he means, right or wrong, for better or worse. And so this whole thing is going to pass. This too shall pass. And frankly, I don't give a damn who's right on this one. All the people that are allegedly being blamed, whether it's Israel, whether it's the CIA, whether it's the TPUSA, whether it's the Republican establishment, whether it's the Democratic establishment, whether it's the transgender critical theory stuff, the Tyler Robinson allegation, all the people that are potentially being blamed by any party in this conflict, we've all already determined for a litany of reasons that they're all supervillains. Outside of the Charlie Kirk assassination, every entity being blamed is evil. So, we should be fighting all these entities just as hard, regardless of which one of them is responsible. It's like asking whether Stalin or Hitler killed a very specific Jew. It's like they both killed a lot of Jews. Maybe they're both bad. Why are we arguing over the specific incident of evil when we already know that Israel's corrupt and that they control our politicians? So why are we trying to figure out if they killed Charlie? And we already know that TPUSA is in a large grifting and conglomerated too much power and is nothing without him. And we all know that the Erica Kirk stuff is weird, and we all know that the CIA and the FBI are screwed up, and the Republican establishment and the deep state are screwed up. It's I don't even care which one of them did it because I'm fighting all of them already.
I think I took that same approach when the Charlie Kirk assassination happened. A lot of people were wanting us to just say Israel did it. And it's I'm not someone that would shy away from that narrative because obviously I believe 9/11 was perpetrated by Israeli agents personally. But, when it comes to the Tyler Robinson narrative, it's is this plausible? I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's I'm against leftist freaks. I'm against fags. I'm against Israel. So yes. I mean, the question is okay, but what is that going to change? I don't know. When it comes to Candace, specifically, seems like she's really been focused on the Tyler Robinson narrative, the Charlie Kirk assassination issue. And I care about the truth on that too. It's not I don't care about exactly what happened in that particular narrative, but I guess just some of the things that she said or done has pissed a lot of people off, and I don't know why. I haven't been following it that much either. I guess I just thought it was funny because it seemed like to me maybe Candace and Alex had been friendly before. It seems like Fuentes has always been kind of flirting with being friendly towards Candace, that they kind of go back and forth.
Candace, come over here. You've been a bad girl.
He has weird relationship there.
So funny.
But, at the end of the day, I just thought it was intriguing. I didn't know if we had some inside baseball. I'm not trying to pit anybody against each other here, but at the end of the day,
we love everyone here on the Baptist Bias.
Well, that's not true. We do hate lots of people.
Alex has had these feuds in the past. He had one for a long time with Glenn Beck. There was one years ago with Joe Rogan. There's a famous video on BitChute. You can only find it on BitChute, and it doesn't even have that many views. It's not famous. It's infamous, I guess, then. Anyway, it's called When Friends Go to War, Part 1. And it's just clips of what Alex said and then what Joe said and then what Alex said and then what Joe said about each other. And there's this moment where Alex goes, God told me to go to war with Joe Rogan.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right? It's I texted Alex last night. He didn't respond, but I saw that he read it. And I just put in all caps, God told me to go to war with Candace Owens, because he does this shit. He means it when he does it. He's not grifting or trying to get clicks or anything. He means it. Somebody says something that pisses him off, or they falsely accuse him of being full of shit, and then he goes to war. He's like a locomotive, man. Once he's going, you can't turn him back, right? Or when Owen quit, for example, from Infowars, he could not talk about anything else for 3 days, and everyone's like, God, Alex, please. But if it's on his mind, he's going to say it. That's just how he operates. And
yeah,
so
we've had Owen on the show, and we're fans of both, but it was obviously kind of, I don't know what was going on. I was just kind of leaving that alone, but
the whole thing was gay.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just
that's a way to summarize it right there. Real concise.
I mean, you kind of look at
everybody was gay about it. Everybody was just a fag about it.
I mean, you look at Alex and Owen; they're so similar. It's do we really need division there? But whatever. At the end of the day, when it comes to the right, when it comes to our side, some people are saying that there's too much division and that we're dividing on the Israel issue. I'm kind of curious. Do you think that that Israel is going to split the Republican Party?
Yeah.
There you go.
and I think
it's already happened.
I think the neoconservative element of the Republican Party is going to die. And all that's going to be left is everything else.
I mean, being anti-Israel was kind of a Democrat viewpoint, I think.
Because we have this evangelical base that, kind of ties in the state of Israel with the way Israel's described in the Bible and God's chosen people in covenant with Abraham. I get it. But the thing that pisses me off about that argument is that okay, I understand where you're coming from, trying to be biblical, but something's wrong here logically. I don't think that's the right theological interpretation, because you're talking about a group of people who all deny Christ. And I thought that was like the one thing you're not supposed to do, right? You're like, where are we here? Like our government is supposed to protect borders, enforce contracts, and protect our rights, and they do everything except for those three things. And what Christians are supposed to do is like reject anyone who denies Christ, and we do everything else. But like all of a sudden, like our favorite like nation state. And I'm not trying to be anti-Semitic here. I don't have a problem with Jewish people, like for ethnic reasons, like the Nazis did. They thought they like classified Jewish people as a race, and they made this whole ethnic argument, and it was about the Ubermensch and all this stuff. I don't have any sort of like a racial problem with Jewish people whatsoever, but from a fucking like cultural, or not even cultural, but from the purely theological perspective, you got a major problem. Like, you deny Christ.
It's kind of like the worst problem.
Yes.
To me, it's the worst religion, and again,
they follow the 10.
Again, I'm as anti-Judaism as it can possibly be, because it's the worst religion. It's the most antichrist and blasphemous religion, and it's really just a reaction to the gospel specifically. So I hate it. It obviously talks about the Lord Jesus Christ in negative ways in the Talmud. That's part of some of their beliefs. They look at mankind as being subservient to Jews and the Goyim, and there's a lot of negative things there as well. But specifically, like, even though I have that opinion, I don't think that we necessarily just have to treat Israel like Hitler did, supposedly according to the official narrative, however you take that. But I'm just saying, like, obviously it's a buffer state in a sense. I think that obviously when it comes to the Middle East, it's unstable as a whole. But could we at least just say to Israel, you guys can't do whatever you want and we're going to back you? Could we just at least say, like, hey, you're not going to drag us around on a leash. You're the one on the leash here, and you're going to do what we want you to do. And, at the end of the day, like, our foreign policy, I agree with the idea of just being as friendly as possible to as many nations as possible. I don't like being the world's police force. But in some ways, we've kind of entangled ourselves. We have U.S. bases everywhere. Obviously, our currency is related to, oil production. And if we just take our hands off the steering wheel a little bit, it could be a major crash. So I think that you'd have to slowly walk away from the situations, from a foreign policy perspective. But just making Gaza a parking lot, and just anything Israel does, we just say yes to. We just give them endless money. Like, I'm totally against these foreign policy ideas. I think that we need to hold them accountable on those particular issues, especially when we're dealing with a theological enemy.
It's a theology that we fight, and I think people, they get confused because you speak against Judaism, they automatically think that you have an issue with an ethnic group because of their genetics or something. We just hate this ethnic group, which is not the case at all. Our issue is with the false religion of Judaism, which the pastor has pointed out does say some of the most evil and blasphemous things about Jesus Christ in the Babylonian Talmud that I've ever heard. You see a lot of Orthodox Jews that will spit on the ground at the mere mention, Pastor, of the name of Jesus.
Oh, they spit on Christians. They spit on missionaries over there. They're very hostile.
It is a unique brand of vitriol that we see coming from Judaism against Christianity. And that is what we are taking issue with, rather than grasping onto the Hitlerian view that, there's an ethnic problem or something.
The
like
most
that.
fiendish.
We're not into the ethnic thing. We're talking about the theological issues that we have.
Well, I really like
problem with a Jewish person who's converted to Christianity.
And
none whatsoever.
And you know what? We know somebody Pastor Shelley, who got a Jew saved and then baptized him.
Yeah, and I mean, I had one of our attorneys was a Jew that was converted to Christianity. Good friends with him, really liked him. I've known other people that have Jewish ethnicity that are not a practicing member of the religion of Judaism that I'm friends with, friendly towards. And even if someone was like that, it's not like I couldn't still be friendly towards that person and try to win them to Christ. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to lie and say that this person's God's child when they deny
God's
the Lord
chosen
Jesus
people, yeah.
Christ. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're special above everybody else. To me, that's actual racism. Actual racism would be to say that this ethnic group of people in the Middle East are just God's chosen based on nothing but their race. That's racism at its pure, at its most finest. And it's funny how we fight, quote, racism, but then we elevate Jews on a godlike status for just simply having long pigtails and a weird nose. I mean, it doesn't seem like that's even what God would have elevated anyways. And when we talk about incestual issues with the Islam, Jews have that same issue when it comes to the incest issue.
Yeah, but not to the same extent.
Well, I would just argue that, because I had a couple other shows where I talked about this, that it's like no matter what you breed, there's always trade-offs. And it seems like Jews, they obviously still retain a lot of IQ, but what they lack in is like nose and facial structure and athleticism. So, they're kind of just, you take two brilliant people and you have a child and it kind of looks like Woody Harrelson, or not Woody Harrelson, but Woody Allen.
Woody
That's what I'm
Allen.
thinking of. It's just like, well, they are smart. I mean, you can't deny that it's like almost all of our media and just music and a lot of stuff that's really high level has been majorly influenced by Jewish individuals, and they probably do have some of the highest IQs, but they're usually not winning the Olympics either.
We had a family friend when I was growing up that was a Jewish guy. And we took him to dinner one time, and he ordered the pork chop on the menu. This is a true story. And my dad goes, "Al, you're Jewish. Why are you ordering the pork chop?" And he just goes, "It's the cheapest thing on the menu."
That's good.
Some people told me, and I kind of can't say that I disagree with this, that the immigration test should just be a bacon cheeseburger, and then we would solve pretty much every single one of our problems. And so, honestly, I think that we could solve a lot of problems with bacon cheeseburgers. Honestly, I've really enjoyed the conversation, and you've been a great guest. And even if we don't fully agree on everything, I like to talk to people that have different opinions and have different circles of friends. And so I appreciate you coming on the show and having a discussion with us. Before we end, is there anything you wanted to bring up or talk about?
I just encourage people to follow Alex on X, support Infowars. Things are about ready to get really tough for Infowars. It's not my position to say what's going on. I'll let Alex do that. But anything you can do to support Infowars, if you go to tomorrowsnewstonight.com, that's my show. It'll redirect you straight to the Alex Jones store. All the products are incredible. I designed many of them. I formulated many of them. And anything you can do to purchase there is not only getting you a great product, but it's keeping Alex on the air, keeping Infowars on the air. And if you go to tomorrowsnewstonight.com, I get a little piece of that too. So I would just encourage people to support Alex and Infowars. And thank you so much for having me, by the way. I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah, your tag at Real Chase Geiser, is that your Twitter handle?
Yep, all the links are in the bio.
So make sure to check out Chase and his show, and the Infowars crew is definitely been friends of ours, and we appreciate that connection. And honestly, I like having these conversations. I like challenging my viewpoints and other people's. I like to talk about these crazy issues. Obviously I preach sermons, but I like to just talk about what's going on in the real world too. And we use some crass language, but dang it, our country at the end of the day, like what does it need? Does it need polite people to just, ignore the major issues, or to use some strong language to talk about some really big issues? And, I really appreciated the show. Ben, do you have any final thoughts here?
Well, it's funny you bring up the language. It's like people watch a football game and their team isn't doing well, and it's like, F, A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever you want, G, H, I, J, K, L, N, O, P.
LGBTQIA plus.
But then, we're talking about real issues here, and someone uses some language, and it's like, or just chill out, okay? It's not the end of the world. But no, I appreciate the chance to be here. Thanks for having me. I thought it was a great show, and I want to just end by thanking Chase Geiser for taking the time to come on. And I think you guys agreed on like virtually everything. I know there was a little bit of disagreement.
The only thing I disagree with is that he kept saying that we disagreed.
Yeah, it's like there was a little bit, but it was mostly. I mean, a couple weeks ago when we had our closest pastor friend on, you guys disagreed way more than on this show. But regardless, I thought that it was an entertaining broadcast tonight, and And God bless you, and thanks for coming on, Chase. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I said that because I just assumed, but honestly, I can't even remember anything we disagreed on. Maybe some nuance, but at the end of the day, great guest, great show. Look, folks, we don't need more Muslims in this country. We need to get people on the Baptist bias.